Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050, how are we going to be able to take care of these people as far as the basic infrastructure, also the food, the water, the fuel, and the fiber that's going to be needed by a planet with 9 billion people. And one of the core areas of all of this, of course, are our forest. And as we say, they're bringing us the fount of water and also able to purify the air, the water, and the soil. And so we're going to be talking with a gentleman who's working around the globe, looking at these different areas, setting up tours, but all at the same time, how do we protect, and not just protect, but enhance the native wildlife and the habitat where they live. We have a gentleman sitting right beside me. His name is Sachin Agarwal. He's the CEO of Planet Life. And Sachin, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Dr. Sam, thank you for having me here.
Well, glad to have you here. Tell us a little about this unique name you have, Planet Wildlife. You hear about Planet, all kinds of things, but not Planet Wildlife.
Well, I think it's a reflection of our ethos, which is really around making sure that what we are doing is helping the planet, is supporting the planet. We essentially, as you mentioned, at the core of our business is conducting tours, is letting our clients go and experience firsthand the natural habitat that the rich wildlife around the world is found in. In the process, what we're hoping to do is get them more engaged, to get them more educated, and get them to love the habitat that and the environment that these animals live in.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And of course, we have a balance between the for-profits and non-profits on the Emerald Planet TV, and we feel like you have to have that that balance. But looking at Planet Wildlife, you are a for-profit. So why is a for-profit in this space, but yet having an emphasis upon protecting wildlife and their habitats?
Because if we didn't have this habitat, we wouldn't have a business. And I think that's actually true of a lot of businesses out there, even if they don't necessarily realize that or recognize that. Essentially, we like to believe that we are a for-profit with some non-profit sensibilities. So what we're talking about over here is using the power of for-profit to develop a sustainable business that's sustainable in many different ways. That's sustainable for the culture and local communities that it supports, that's sustainable for the local habitat that these communities and the wildlife exist in. So essentially, what we are trying to do is get local communities that live around these habitats engaged with our tourists, with our businesses, increase the economic value that these habitats have for these communities, and in the process give them an incentive to actually enhance the habitat, to preserve it and to grow it.
Yeah, I just love that point, because Emerald Planet is all about this balance between the environment and economic development, sustainable projects. And many people, either they're focused on the environment, they focus on the economy, and many people seem somewhat resistant to blend these two together. But yet, over the conversation I've been having over the last few months, we've gotten to know each other, you just flow effortlessly one into the other as far as the environment and economic development, sustainability. So looking at your core value of the Planet Wildlife, how did you come to that realization that we really do need to blend these two areas?
Well, I think, so some of this came from some work that I had done back with an NGO in South Africa. And we were looking to develop a model for engagement at the grassroots level. It was work that is funded by the Ford Foundation. I was working with TechnoServe. And the model was essentially what we are implementing with Planet Wildlife, but it was from a skills development or a community engagement perspective. Now what we're doing with Planet Wildlife is using the power and the skills that lie with for-profit industries, which is around demand generation, marketing, sales, and to drive it in a very responsible way, to drive it to responsible destinations and drive it to responsible communities.
Mm-hmm. Looking at CSR, what does CSR stand for, and why is that important to what you're doing, but also any type of corporation, large or small, on the planet?
So CSR, or corporate social responsibility, is really companies or corporations taking responsibility or taking a certain stake into what needs to happen on the ground, or ideally around their supply chain or their value chain. I think what CSR is really important for is increasing the scope of engagement of the of corporations beyond their immediate business. So, for example, with Planet Wildlife, while we're focused on responsible business in itself, there are some other projects, there are some other organizations that we do like to support. So, for example, there's the Jerry Martin Project, which is a herpetology-focused project in India, which is that we contribute money to. We also engage with the Asian Wildlife Foundation, which is also based in India, who we've supported as well. There is there's an orphanage in India that we use. We get some of our marketing collateral made from, and that's again, going back to working with the communities that we are engaged with.
Well, looking at the engagement with the communities, this is something with Emerald Planet once we start the Emerald Trek. And actually we've had a number of these mini treks, but there's two platforms. One is the technology side of that. The other is really the local culture and the music, the costumes, the food, all these other kinds of things. So looking at the local communities, how are you engaging, or how do you think they should be engaged, one or both, in order to actually to protect the habitats for the wildlife in these local communities?
I think that gets to the meat of what we're trying to do. So you've mentioned a couple of different things. So first is the cultural element to it. If you go for safari to South Africa, at a classic, plain and simple safari lodge, a typical day looks like going for a safari drive in the morning, coming back, having a nice fancy brunch, lounging by the pool, going for a safari drive in the evening, and then going to bed. That experience is repeated at 100 different safari lodges across South Africa, and that experience would be exactly the same if you were in Kenya, would be exactly the same if you were in Tanzania. So what a lot of these lodges are missing is a sense of place. So they don't, and that's driven by the local culture, that's driven by local experiences. So what we're trying to do, or what we try to do, is work with lodges or work with communities where they engage with the local community. So when you're at the lodge, you do get a sense for being within a certain tribal region of South Africa, within a certain community. So engaging with the local villagers, do we have night stories with the tribal elders? Can we engage with them to try the local cuisine, for example? So that is from a local culture perspective. We've got that. From the perspective of actually maintaining or improving the natural habitat, we've had lodges, we've had destinations where even as goods as basic as their fresh produce, they would fly in from Johannesburg or fly in from Pretoria, where they're completely circumventing the local communities. Now, if we can improve the capabilities and the producing capacity of the local communities, then all of a sudden we're training the local villagers and people around those lodges to work at those lodges, to provide goods to those lodges. And they could be handicrafts, they could be the vegetables and fruits that are consumed by those lodges. And now these local communities have an incentive to maintain the habitat, because that's indirectly their source of livelihood.
So what you're doing then, in a sense, is you're almost like reintroducing local communities to the habitats where all these nature preserves, and they could be on public lands like national parks, national forests, but these could even be private lands where people have vast tracts of where you have the habitat, but also the animals themselves, but also to allow people to feel like if we protect this, then we can actually have a continuous, which is a sustainable livelihood right here in our own community. So looking at that, extrapolating that across to other private corporations, how can they learn from the model that's being developed through Planet Wildlife?
I think our industry, we're lucky that our industry, it's very obvious that we rely on natural resources. With some of the other industries, it's not as obvious. Their supply chains are more complex and they're more removed from what their customers are consuming. But there is no industry out there that does not rely on natural resources. So I believe that if at the even at the most basic level, if they're not cognizant of the natural resources that they're consuming, they will risk their supply chains. And I think there's some great work being done. For example, in the World Bank is now with the IFC is trying to develop the Natural Capital Declaration, which is a framework for corporations to understand their supply chain. And I think as some of these frameworks get developed and get accepted, there will be an increasing awareness and hence more engagement of other sectors with their natural value chains.
Well, I tell you, it's absolutely fantastic to see these various images that you provided to put on the Emerald Planet TV, but we only have about a minute left. So you can take the full minute, but we'll need to be out by then. But what do you see for the next 5, 10, 15 years as far as Planet Wildlife itself is concerned? And what do you see for nature and the wildlife habitats over the next 5, 10, 15 years as we go towards 2050?
Well, I think there's going to be, for us, we're looking to increase our footprint. We're looking to get closer to the communities in more parts of the world. But for other sectors, I think it's going to be inevitable that they will engage more with their supply chains and the parts of the world that they come from.
So it's really important then that people are very aware of where their resources are actually coming from, and these are large multinational corporations, even the small scale enterprises, which are very important, and in local communities.
All of them, absolutely.
Everything. Well, it sounds like you've got a really good model going there, and you are global, so that's something that we really like about what you're doing as far as the Emerald Planet is concerned. So Sachin Aggarwal, who is the CEO of Planet Wildlife, thank you for being with us on the Emerald Planet TV. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to determine where we're going on the planet as we create the Emerald Planet.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit ASHA.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
Saving for retirement might be easy for
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that we need to take us through to 2050 and beyond to the end of the 21st century. Because we're going to soon have a planet that has 9 billion souls on it, and so how are we going to be able to take care of all these people? We have a gentleman who's actually going out and recording what the world looks like now and then to be able to show what it may look like in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And we'll be able to compare, and hopefully we'll be able to show that we're actually enhancing what's going on the planet and not depleting the natural resources and what is needed to sustain the 2 billion new people that will be joining us on planet Earth. This gentleman's name is Terry Asker, who is the Executive Director of the Big Tree Project Foundation. Also, he's a world-renowned photographer, and we're going to be seeing some of his actual images throughout this segment. And sitting right beside me is Sachin Agrawal, who is the CEO of Planet Wildlife, and he's here in case we lose Terry by Skype. And so I want to say, Sachin, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And Terry, thank you for joining us by Skype, and welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you, and we're going to go ahead and bring up your first image here. I think this is just fantastic as far as what the Emerald Planet is all about, and as we adjust to that, we'll get that going. So anyway, tell us, what is the Big Tree Project Foundation?
Well, the Big Tree Foundation is a nonprofit educational organization that is dedicated to inspiring and informing the public about the importance of our Earth's forest ecosystems. Currently, our global forest loss is an issue that is affecting just about every living being on the planet, and many of us in North America are actually not quite aware of it. So the Big Tree Foundation is working to motivate education and action around this growing issue so we can further the understanding and the importance of protecting and conserving these remaining forest ecosystems on our planet.
Well, I tell you, these images, Terry, are absolutely fantastic, and we're going to be seeing more of these as we go through this particular segment. But looking at the Big Tree Project Foundation, what actually was the genesis of this, and what really kind of moved you to dedicate so much time and energy and resources to creating the foundation at the same time when you're more than active as a photographer and really traveling around the globe taking all these fantastic images?
Well, I started my photography career actually as a corporate and advertising shooter. So that put me out on the global stage. And as I traveled and was able to actually personally experience what was happening in many developing countries and how our global economy was impacting the finite resources of Earth, it just, became a situation that moved me towards more of an educational focus with my photography. So it's an alignment that I have, towards that mission, and it was just a gradual process.
Well, looking at the three images we've had up already, there's a very ethereal, or maybe even a spiritual context embedded in this. What is it about your photography that allows people to really feel the vibrancy, the challenge, but yet the promise of these areas where you're actually taking these images?
I think it's probably an honesty that I just strive to allow to come through, to communicate, through these photographs of the truth of what's happening on our planet. There are a lot of different types of photographic genres, and many times when you see wildlife photography or you see landscape photography done, people are more oriented to the pristine environments, or they're more oriented to showing a particular type of wildlife, in an intact ecosystem. But so much of the Earth's forest ecosystems now are fragmented and have been destroyed, that it's actually the leading factor driving species extinction. So we're using the power of photography and actually incorporating that into multimedia types of presentations and an educational curriculum to get this message out to the public. And of course, we want to use it in an educational curriculum for our young children who are growing up around the world, so they can understand the importance of having a balanced relationship, a sustainable relationship with nature, with the planet, and with our animal relatives who are really depending on us for their survival.
Well, the whole concept, regardless of what religion you're from, is that we have all these beings, and whether they're insects, animals, plants, or humans, they're all precious. And we certainly do need to protect, not only just protect, but we need to enhance and expand, because as we add 2 billion new people on the planet, we're going to have a lot of resource demands, and we have to take care of it. But looking at the global scope and objectives of your organization, how do you feel like through your photography and sharing this around the globe, are we actually going to be able to have a positive impact as we go towards 2050?
Well, it's our hope that by taking our global education curriculum and incorporating our, outreach educational campaigns into the internet and utilize social media, innovative distribution channels, and innovative programming, we're wanting to deliver our platform on as cutting edge of technology as we possibly can. So, our commitment is to share our stories and this information through all forms of media and partnerships, because it's just so critical and important that every human being and every animal, like you said, an insect on the planet, has this right to clean resources, clean air, clean water, a stable climate to live in. And it's a big undertaking, but it's our passion, and we're very dedicated.
Well, looking at that, I know that the passion, the dedication, when we met out in Tulsa at the National Congress of American Indians, you could really feel the passion you had for all these various places that you're going to be on the planet and have been traveling to, but also how you want to continue that in the future. And we certainly want to recognize you for doing that. We have, as you know, Sachin Agrawal sitting right beside me of Planet Wildlife, and he's here in case we lose you by Skype, but we seem to be doing okay. So, Sachin, won't you ask the next question?
Yeah, sure. Terry, I was wondering, as you use your photography, as you develop, you leverage the work that you're doing, what activities, what programs do you have within the Big Tree Foundation? What are you working on?
Well, our primary program is actually called the Fragmented Forest Project. And it's basically a multifaceted outreach campaign. There are a lot of components to it, but our primary scope there again is international and multicultural. So it's going to involve an educational curriculum that will be designed for public and private schools, and this will be kindergarten through middle school. We're also focusing on high school to college level. There's going to be a specific curriculum for that, and that's going to involve social media applications. And the multimedia and video capabilities for us to reach a broader demographic of our human culture is going to be very important for us. We're looking to develop seminars, lectures, special presentations, just to get this information out, to as many facets of the human culture as we possibly can. We're also planning public installations, and these will be exhibits that can be installed in public spaces throughout the world to expose viewers to the current state of our planet's ecosystems and hopefully entice action and awareness towards the need for conservation.
Well, looking at the work that you're doing, and we've almost run out of time, Terry, so what do you see over the next 5, 10, 15 years as far as your work, the Big Tree Project Foundation, and where we're headed on the planet as we move towards 2050?
Well, that's a good question, Dr. Sam. It's a difficult one from the perspective of what I'm seeing with the current state of our forest ecosystems. I am optimistic because there is obviously growing awareness about the limited resources that we have and the importance of finding a sustainable relationship, and especially with the forests that are located in these emerging economies and developing countries. It's my hope, that we can actually find a balance and come into a sustainable relationship. The facts of the matter are that we actually have a number of forest ecosystems in developing countries right now that are close to collapse. So we can just work towards the solution. And
Terry, we're going to lose you. We just ran out of time. Terry Asker is Executive Director of the Big Tree Project Foundation. Thank you for being with us. And sitting right beside me, Sachin Agrawal, as we create the Emerald Planet.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo. I would like to speak English better. Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
El Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals,
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos,
are a small part of what we do.
Son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia.
Comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
Ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe for the technologies, the services, and the products, and of course the people that are making a difference as we move towards 2050 and as we go through the 21st century. As we talk about incessantly, we're going to be adding about 2 billion new people to the planet, and how we're going to be able to take care of all these folks, and at the same time, not just to provide a way to sustain life, but actually to enhance the quality of life in every way. The food, the fuel, the fiber, also the basic infrastructure of education, healthcare, all those human needs that we have that's coming out of this planet. And many people say that we're not able to even take care of the 7+ billion that we have now. How are we going to add 2 billion? Well, by the end of this particular century, they're saying there may be at least 12 billion people on the planet. So we better figure it out and do it quick. We have a gentleman who is involved with what's called the Fragmented Forest Project. He's the project administrator. This is Hayden, and he goes by the name of Dean Dobbin-Speck. And Dean, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
Glad to have you here. And tell us a little bit about what the Fragmented Forest Project is all about.
The Fragmented Forest Project will video and photograph the 16 most threatened forest ecosystems in the world for scientific documentation, and it will create curriculum and video which can be downloaded off the internet to the school classrooms, and also for the purpose of mobile devices to bring education to the next generation. We will also develop awareness campaigns to benefit business and consumers to increase awareness on the steps they can take to extend the life of our forest.
Well, looking at what you're doing, I know you're a certified public accountant and have a very successful career. So what led you into the Fragmented Forest Project, and how are you marrying this CPA and business background with what you're doing as far as the project itself?
Well, the way I marry those together is my dear friend Terry Asker and I have been associated for more than 30 years. He wanted to develop this project, and I got on board to assist him. You know, my passion has been the study of philosophy for the last 40 years, so certainly that's helped my awareness on sustainability for our planet.
Well, looking at it, what is the relationship between the Fragmented Forest Project and the Big Tree Project Foundation?
The Big Tree Foundation is a nonprofit registered in the state of Oregon for educational purposes. It is the sponsor of the Fragmented Forest Project, which will develop and produce and distribute the educational content for the Big Tree Foundation.
So looking at the demands, as in my preamble I was talking about, we're going to add 2 billion new people to the planet by 2050, maybe as many as 12 billion by the end of the century. So when we look at just the insatiable appetite of a planet with that many people, and adding 2 billion new mouths to feed and people that need to be clothed and provide fuel for, how can we look at the situation of the environment And how do you think that at-risk communities need to be incorporated into what you're doing as far as the Big Tree Project Foundation and also the Fragmented Forest Project to enhance and expand the natural habitats in the forest that are going to just absolutely need to be increased, not decreased, over the next 20, 30 years?
Well, our project is focused on education for the next generation of the world humanity to try to change the dynamic of the world orientation toward nature. And we hope to increase awareness of the importance of of nature and the interconnected relationship humanity has with nature.
Well, we're looking at this forest scene here, and of course this is an idyllic situation, but yet there are many images we could put here of slash and burn where these forested areas, these mountain peaks could actually be completely denuded of any kind of vegetation, and you see smoke rising from those areas and people bringing in all types of agricultural products. How do you think we can balance these, as you're calling, fragmented forest with the demands for human beings to have a way to support themselves and their families?
We hope to bring awareness to consumers and to businesses to look at changing their methods of consumption. Instead of using lumber, for example, we want to encourage the use of wood veneer, which would multiply the productivity of a tree by 10-fold. And we would like to see the use of reconstituted wood and man-made materials in lieu of cutting down our sacred trees.
So,
yeah, we got, as we introduced earlier, we got Sachin Agrawal, who is the CEO of Planet Wildlife and comrade in arms and what you're doing as far as the Fragmented Forest Project. He's here to back up on Skype, and so since we seem to be doing very well, Dean, I'm going to let Sachin ask the next question.
So, Dean, if you will, as you travel, as you experience the forests around the world and in America, what are you seeing? Can you describe the loss of forests and the habitat?
We are losing 2 football fields of rainforest every second. This cannot be sustained on a long-term basis. At the present time, 20% of our forests are in pristine, sustainable ecosystems. 1,000 years ago, 90% of the earth was forest, and now it's 10%. So we're moving forward at a dire condition of destruction. And unfortunately, much of the destruction now is in our emerging nations that depend on their natural resources and their forest for their economic activity. So, to change this significantly is going to take some real governmental and international effort.
Yeah, Dean, looking at it, I was down in Mexico this year going to the preserve, which is a national United Nations preserve historical site. And they're losing 300 hectares of these special trees needed by the monarch butterfly. And many people really aren't aware the monarch butterfly is a pollinator, so plants need the monarch as well as thousands of other insects to be able to pollinate to bring about the food that we need for human beings. And yet when we look at this particular photograph here that you provided, we're really destroying the forest and any hope of protecting the pollinators. So what do you see as far as your project, as far as education and action towards educating people about nature and how we need to have a sustainable lifestyle?
Well, let me begin by saying the majority of the people in the world today live in cities. and to a large degree, humanity has lost its connection with nature. We hope to provide an educational program for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade school system to reach the next generation and help them connect with nature in the only way possible, which is through the internet and through mobile devices. We're going to offer the teachers suggestions on school activities, such as planting seeds so that children can experience the birth of a seed into a plant. This will help the next generation have a greater sensitivity to nature. At least this is our hope.
Well, you have to have hope, Dean, in order to move forward, and something that you're doing, and also with Terry Asker, who is a colleague of yours with the Big Tree Project Foundation, and something that we talked about when we first met out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where you're coming from at this time, about the nurseries that we're setting up at the sister school projects across Mexico. And right now we have 5 of these sister schools with the about 20 plus schools in Washington, D.C. But eventually we'd like to have nurseries in every primary, middle, and high school across the entire country of Mexico. So looking at that kind of expansion, and we only have about a minute left to talk about it, how do you think we can involve the schools so that nurseries become part of their regular curriculum?
Well, we hope that we can provide recommendations for activities where each school can have a garden center for organic gardening and for a nursery to plant fruit-bearing trees for their own food use in the classroom. We're going to attempt to do this on a global basis.
Well, I tell you, that's a very aggressive project when you're looking at the literally tens of thousands of schools, across the globe, and yet we're going to be having many more schools as we add another 2 billion souls. We're about out of time. What do you see about the remaining forest, and what do we need to do over the next 10, 15, 20 years as we try to balance population growth with the forest?
The best hope we have now is to take the ideas that are working, like in Brazil, where they're reducing the destruction of the Amazon forest with different techniques with the farmers and the landowners. And if we can transfer these ideas from one area that's working to other areas where they need help, maybe we can learn from each other and reduce the destruction of our forests.
Thank you very much. Hayden, it goes by Dean Dobbin-Speck, who is the project administrator for the Fragmented Forest Project. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
I helped turn my child's public school into a whole new kind of school. One with a curriculum that really motivates kids. One that has extended hours, 6 days a week, year-round. With loads of academic, cultural, and recreational activities. One that has support services like medical and dental right there. A school where parents' involvement is encouraged. Where teachers have more time to teach. And students are excited about learning. There's just one problem. My child doesn't ever want to come home. You can help turn your school into a community school for excellence. Find out how. Call 1-877-LOVE-TO-LEARN.
It's coming. Right to your neighborhood. And when it does, you may be surprised. It's your Social Security statement of your benefits, and it's going to help you plan your financial future. Your benefit statement will tell you how much Social Security you're eligible to receive and when you'll get it. Then you'll know how much you need to save for retirement, because that's coming too. The future is in your hands. Choose to save.
The toxic fumes from this meth lab are seeping into Jamie's sinus cavity. Ammonia vapors invade her throat. Toxic gases fill her lungs. Jamie's body is deteriorating. And she doesn't even know it.
Jamie, dinner.
So, who has the drug problem now? Find out how meth affects you at drugfree.org/.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of Emerald Planet and also the Director and host of the Emerald Planet TV. Coming to you weekly to bring you the very best ideas and the people that are actually having a true impact on the planet and how we're going to be able to accommodate a orb that's going to have 9 billion people by 2050 and perhaps 12 billion by the end of the century. And so we're trying to bring you the best of people that are providing the leadership to help us to prepare the earth and also to expand and enhance the quality of life. We have a gentleman coming on who is involved in a very dynamic project and program, David Milarch, who is the co-founder of what's called the Archangel Ancient Trees Archive. David, that's quite a name you have there for your organization. And sitting right beside me is Sachin Agrawal, who is the CEO of what's called the Planet Wildlife. And he's here in case we lose David and when he's coming in by Skype. So David, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Well, it's truly my pleasure to be here this evening. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're doing absolutely fantastic work, and we're going to let you do, as they call, a little shout out in the middle of everything we're doing about some of your announcements. But tell us about the Archangel Ancient Trees Archive and how you came up with such a unique name.
Well, the name is, we were looking for something that was catchy, it was appropriate and powerful. And there's a lot of organizations that use the word angel. Well, it was actually my son, Jared, who came up with, well, aren't archangels more powerful than angels? It's going to take a lot of horsepower to turn environmental problems around. So he actually conceived of something more powerful than an angel. It was an archangel to help us restore this planet.
Well, I want to go back to this first image, which is actually the logo for your organization, if we can bring this up. And just tell us a little bit about how this evolved. This is a very complex logo that you have, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, basically, we've been in the shade tree business for 4 generations here in northern Michigan. And about 20 years ago, the shade tree industry, we saw the weaknesses in the trees, the designer trees. You know, as we deforested the planet, our megalopolises increased and we would destroy the ecosystems. We would try and plug back in designer trees with a pretty leaf or a pretty flower. And we soon realized that the average lifespan of a street planted tree in America here is only 7-8 years old. So when you completely destroy an ecosystem, cut down all the native trees, scrape up the topsoil, that's not sustainable. It's nowhere near the model of, the triple bottom line model that, we all adhere to at this time. So we also knew that native trees were virtually unavailable to help restore the urban forest where 90% of the population lives. So we had the grand idea of, why not try and clone the biggest, oldest, strongest, the oldest and largest living things on Earth, the remaining few percentage of the native ancient trees. And we were naive then, and we didn't know that it was thought to be impossible. But we soon found out that most academics, most people in the industry said it's impossible to clone a several hundred or several thousand-year-old tree. We've tried, it won't work. Well, we thought those genetics were important to help rebuild and reestablish those ecosystems. So we set off on our way.
Why are trees so important? And this is really to the humans, the animals, the plants, even the insects. And it's something we just don't think about, particularly if we're in urban areas. And as you were saying, the majority of the people in the United States, I think it now is as high as 83%. But by 2050, it's going to be over 75% of all people on the planet going to be living in urban areas. So how are we going to be able to match these ancient trees that you're talking about with very modern urban landscapes?
That's a really, really good question, and therein lies whether we succeed or we fail as a species to be able to stay on this planet. There's a price to be paid for urbanization done with less than an intelligent design, which is go in, destroy the entire ecosystem, capitalize on the value of the timber, the soil, but destroy that whole ecosystem and the ecosystems within our watershed, and try and plug back in pretty flowers, pretty trees, and sustain the quality of life that's been here for 10,000, 15,000 years. So we thought that to go after some of the nemesis problems, the gigantic problems that we're all facing, like climate change, we better harness the power of Mother Nature, and to harness that power to help heal the planet and help increase the quality of life, we better try and put back what we've destroyed. Like here in the United States, we've cut down 98% of our old growth forests. When we cut down those forests, we didn't even study them before we did that, and we destroyed the entire ecosystem. And why are trees important? Well, number one, they're the largest and oldest living things on this earth. The largest and the oldest. And they are the key ecosystem and watershed in most cases. The key component to rebuilding or holding that ecosystem for millions of organisms that live in the soil and the air, for the birds, for the pollinators, and the jobs that they did before we destroyed all the world's forests in large part. We didn't even understand all the key critical roles that all living things need that are the forest. So it's sort of like the premise that if we rebuild the forest utilizing old growth forest genetics, the rest will come. If you build it, they will come. So we saw the destruction not only of the rainforest, but the urbanization of the planet. And we really didn't have the ways or the means or the tools to restore those ecosystems. Well, here's some good news. For the first time in the history of the planet, we now have the tools, we have the science, we have the technology. We're cloning the world's largest and oldest trees. Trees that are up to 4,000 years old. And why is that important? Because the trees are the skeleton of the body of the ecosystem, or the watershed. And a body built without a skeleton will not survive or stand. But we know from hard science now that if we put the ecosystem, begin to put the ecosystem back in, or that watershed, with the key components being the trees, the rest follows. Because when you destroy the forest, you destroy habitat for most all living things. So you have to have a place to start, and the place to start is with the basic, most important component, which are the native old growth trees. And we can do that now, first time ever.
Well, I think it's really both interesting, sobering, and exciting at the same time of what you're talking about. And David, it's just really a tribute to you and your entire family and the 4 generations been working with the trees, because one of the things that we've been doing on Emerald Planet TV is that we embed something about trees in every one of our television programs, because, as you said, it's the bedrock of the backbone as far as the environment is concerned, and we need to be very concerned about that. What do you think that trees do for society, do for the planet, that most families and even local communities just may not be aware of? And they're doing things that actually are challenging the ecosystem, that's actually giving them sustenance and providing shelter and cover. And yet, if they just changed a little bit in what they're doing, it would actually enhance instead of degrade the environment around them, and particularly the forest.
Well, I notice the importance of trees to the Emerald Planet, because embedded in the background of your home page and most of your pages is the tree of life. It is the key critical component on this planet to which all things in our oceans, our rivers, our lakes, our soils, our water, are all dependent on healthy forests. And I see that you've implanted that in the background of most of your pages. And I would like to add that at the beginning of this millennium, Sam, we've been following the path of preservation. That path is no longer viable. We failed at that miserably. We lost tens of thousands of key species that we really needed. This is the era now that we have to have a paradigm shift, Sam, of restoration. We have to put back and fix what we destroyed if we hope to survive as a species, humans. Whether we live, our grandchildren have the opportunity to live here on this planet Earth, right now we're at a crossroads, a very serious crossroads, that unless we all engage actively, have a concerted effort of restoration, putting back these key components of our watersheds, of our ecosystems, it's kind of doubtful whether human life is even possible in the not too distant future. So the place to begin is, number one, we've never had trees with the genetics that we now have available by cloning the world's largest and oldest trees. And we're starting to make those tools available to rebuild those ecosystems in our watersheds or anywhere on the planet using the key components, which are the trees. So that's the good news. We're at a crossroads, but we now have the tools for the first time to help begin to turn things around and go after some of the problems that we have. Number one would be climate change. You know, trees breathe in CO2, we all know that. It all exhales oxygen, we understand that. But like with the sequoias that we're cloning, most people do not realize that a mature giant sequoia weighs 1,000 tons. That's equal to 9 blue whales. And 40% of the weight of that tree is stored dried carbon. 40% or 400 tons. So when you start to rebuild old growth forests, which by the way, Archangel did last December, we rebuilt the world's first redwood old growth forest in Southern Oregon, Port Orford, as a model for the world that we can rebuild and restore old growth forests. That's pretty big news, especially when we go after this nemesis of climate change. I hope that answers some of your questions.
Well, we have about 15 seconds left. What do you see for Archangel Ancient Trees Archive over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And it's got to be quick.
We're starting the UK collection over in England. We have a division that we're opening up for the nonprofit, but we need your help. We need the world's help to help rebuild in a concerted effort, put back old growth forests.
Well, David Mellarsh, who is the co-founder of Archangel Ancient Trees Archive, thank you for being with us. And sitting right beside me is Sachin Aggarwal, CEO of Planet Wildlife. And thank you for being with us around the globe as we look at the planet and how we're going to be able to create the Emerald Planet.